make sure you have that bladed edge, the blade edge of the chuck, or if you're using a sword here. And then when you get to the side, you're going to hit. It goes sideways and it bounces off my body, and I'm going to catch it with this hand. It bounces off my body and I catch it. And now when I do multiple of these, I actually just allow it to slide out of this other hand. But I want to get control of that each time when I do these strikes. That allows me to be able to block and strike and block and strike and block and strike. All right, now I'm going to go over another combat strike that I like to do. And when I say combat strike, it's really just a strike I would actually do during sparring with the nunchucks. Right? So there's actually not that many strikes that I would do during sparring with nunchucks, especially not a lot of these things where I catch here. Unless I have two chucks, then I might, catch underneath. But I'm probably not going to be doing a lot of these strikes that start and end in this position here. Probably not going to be doing that. All right. I like to start in a position like this where I'm holding both hands on the chucks. That way I can block and then throw a strike. All right, so that one I just did, that's the four-hand combat strike. There's our video out for that. Go watch that. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to cover the downward combat strike. Sometimes I'll call it a circular strike. Sometimes I'll call it a downward strike. In Kali, this is called a redondo strike, which just means circular strike, right? It looks like a circle. So I'm actually going to teach you first with a stick, because it is easier. It's a little bit easier with the stick than it is with the chucks. So I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to start here. First thing we're going to do is we're just going to do a little bit of a wrist roll. Boom. So I'm just kind of using my wrist at first. Now later on I'm going to use my whole body as I do this strike, but just kind of the wrist. Now one of the things I want you to keep in mind when you're doing this is I want you to imagine that this is a sword, right? And you're going straight down with that blade edge. One of the things I see some people do is they kind of do this windshield wiper motion. So if this was a sword, they'd be hitting with the flat edge of the blade. That's not something you want to do. You want to hit with the bladed edge. And you can tell the bladed edge based off these knuckles. So you're knocking knuckles, right? You knock on somebody's door. That's usually the same orientation as the blade edge whenever you're holding a sword, right? So we're going to start off here, have the blade edge going down, down, down. And now there's going to be a certain point where my wrist, without moving my whole arm, just doesn't go down anymore. That's when I'm going to turn it to the side and bring it back. Point down, down, down with that bladed edge. My wrist can't go any further, right? It just doesn't. I go sideways. And now that sideways is more important with the chucks than it kind of is with the stick, but you're starting to get the idea here. I want to roll the wrist, point here. So I'm just doing the wrist motion at first. Blade edge pointed straight, and then turn to the side. Blade edge pointed straight, and turn to the side. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to still use a little bit of wrist, and now I want to also rotate more at my elbow. So I'm still going down here, and then I rotate at my elbow. So you can isolate it by holding onto your bicep and making sure that that joint moves at the elbow. Here, blade edge pointed down, as far as I can go, closes, opens back up, blade edge pointed down. And then I can use my whole arm, so I'm using all of the joints in my arm. I'm using my shoulder, my elbow, and my wrist to make sure that I have that blade edge pointed down. Comes back around, blade edge pointed down. And then later on, I'm actually going to use my hip to help power generate. I open my hip out, and then I will close my hip in right before, and I'll open it back up here. And that will just help for a little bit more power generation. We can use that hip. Now that hip isn't always necessary. A lot of the times you're actually going to be using footwork and you're not going to be able to twist that hip into it. That's fine. But just for static practice, you can move that hip to help generate a little bit more power, or if you're actually striking something, you can use the hip to generate that power. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on, and we're going to use the chucks. So practice that with the stick, get the idea of it. If you need to, you can practice it with the closed chucks if you don't have a Kali stick. And now we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to open it up, and at first, I'm going to probably make these bigger motions. So see how I'm raising my chucks up to my head level, and I'm going to come down. Boom, boom. Later on, I really don't want you raising it up and showing, hey, I'm about to strike downwards. It's actually going to be more of a position like this, and it's just going to whip forward as you strike down. Now, this isn't going to go completely straight down because, well, I'm probably going to hit myself in the leg, and that's not fun. So don't do that. it actually does have a little bit of an angle to it, all right? It's not quite at a 45-degree angle, but it is having a little bit of an angle. And now when you do this as well, I want you to have a bladed posture. Bladed posture means if I'm facing directly towards you, you can see one leg is kind of hidden away behind my other leg, as opposed to a squared posture here. Squared posture here, this angle is going to be too much. It's not really going to be a downward strike anymore. So keep that in mind. If you're in the squared posture, if I turned to one side, now that would be a bladed posture. So keep that in mind. This strike comes from a bladed posture or bladed stance. So we're going to go here, point the butt of the chuck, make sure you have that bladed edge, the blade edge of the chuck, or if you're using a sword here. And then when you get to the side, you're going to hit. It goes sideways and it bounces off my body, and I'm going to catch it with this hand. It bounces off my body and I catch it. And now when I do multiple of these, I actually just allow it to slide out of this other hand. But I want to get control of that each time when I do these strikes. That allows me to be able to block and strike and block and strike and block and strike. We want to be able to block quickly. Again, that's one of the important parts of combat strikes, is it quickly returns back to both hands on the chucks. It's very important. If somebody is striking at you, you need to be able to block it. You're probably not going to block it like this. It's not going to work too well. It's just going to go through the chuck that you're swinging on. So be able to get that positive control each time. Now, one of the common mistakes that I've seen people do when doing this is they do this. Let me show from this side. It goes right back into their hand. It doesn't actually bounce off of their body. Now, when you're actually throwing power, I don't even want to catch it with power and try to catch that. You're not diminishing the power. So we're going down and we're bouncing off our body, and that bounce is what diminishes the power. So I'm bouncing. I do that strike, and then as soon as my wrist goes as far as it can go, I go sideways. And that's what is going to diminish that power and allow me to catch it. And if you just need practice catching it, just hit it off the side of your body, let it bounce. And you can practice first by pinning it to your body, but later on you're going to catch it a little bit away from your body. Whenever you start practicing this a little bit more, you'll get a lot more comfortable with that. But again, always make sure that you get back to 2 hands on the chucks. And one last tip whenever you're doing this, try to hold the chucks as far to the end as you can. Try not to be in a middle grip or a short grip. We want to always make sure that we're doing our combat strikes from a long grip. That way we can actually hit them, because if I'm here in a short grip, I can't hit my target. And this is very frustrating when you're sparring if you can't hit the target. So make sure you get a long grip so you can reach the target. See, I can't reach him. And this is the most frustrating thing when you're doing a strike and you're like 2 inches away from hitting the person and you realize, oh, I was in a middle grip, I was in a short grip, I had the 2 inches on my weapon, I could have hit them, but I was holding it in the wrong grip. So make sure you're holding it in the correct grip. That way you can reach your target each and every time. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Give it a shot.